Southward as you go, there is moonlight and moss in the trees, down the seven bridges road.
Great job.
Welcome, Don.
Oh, thank you so much.
I'm gonna ask the question that's on everybody's mind. What did you do last night after the show?
Well, you know, we had a pretty early wake-up call this morning. We're flying down to Orlando about noon, so I went back to the hotel after the meet and greet and stuff. I went back to the hotel, finished packing everything, went down to the bar and had a little salad with Kim Campbell, who's Glenn Campbell's wife, who lives here in Nashville, and caught up with her for a little bit, and then I went to bed about 11:30, probably before most of you guys went to bed.
let me tell you what I'm going to tell my friends.
Okay. Yeah,
I
make
went
up
back to
something
Don's room.
exciting.
It was
but-
awesome. So, but yeah, because here are some things on Don's rider: traditional medicinal organic lemon throat tea, sparkling water, Gatorade, fresh fruit, assorted unsalted nuts. When did that all go south?
Well, you know, I did enough damage in the 70s to last me a lifetime, to tell you the truth. So I stopped drinking in 1980 and just decided the longevity really was in taking care of yourself and eating well and getting the right kind of sleep patterns and being happy. That's pretty much the key to my happiness is living clean and living right.
Yeah. Well, it showed, because that was an awesome performance last night. The other thing that caught my, it's always amazing to hear stories when you just dropped everything and went west. And it sounded like there was no plan B. Was there a plan B? Or?
There was never a plan B. I started playing guitar when I was 10 years old. Absolutely fell in love with it. Spent all the hours that I should have been studying and preparing for tests and stuff in high school in my bedroom, playing guitar that wasn't plugged in. And finally put together a band early on with a guy named Stephen Stills. You might have heard of him.
Yeah.
We were like 14, 15. We were just kids, you know. Had this band, and Stephen left Gainesville and moved to California. And another guy showed up named Bernie Ledden, who replaced Stephen in my band. We made a record and had kind of a regional hit down in the southeast in Florida. And then eventually I wound up, Bernie left and moved to California, and I moved to New York. And I wound up making a record there. A record producer saw my band at the Fillmore East and signed us to a record contract. And after the second winter in New York City, being from the South in Florida, and only having a jean jacket to keep myself warm, I realized maybe New York is not the place for me to live. I actually moved to Boston because my high school sweetheart was there. And we got married, and I was working in recording studios and stuff in Boston, and Bernie kept calling me and saying, "You've got to come to California. This is the place to be. That's where the music business is." And so finally I took his advice and saved up $600. This is 69, I think. And got a U-Haul trailer and hooked it on the back of my car, packed what few possessions, mostly guitars and amps I had in it, and drove from Boston to California. Got to LA, and Bernie was the only guy I knew there, and he was just leaving to go on the road. So I got an apartment. I went and applied at Kelly's group, or the Manpower group, and lied on my resume, saying I knew computers and I could do this and that, and got a job for IBM. So I put on a sports coat and a tie and went into IBM, put my hair back in a ponytail, and went into IBM, and it took them about 3 hours, 4 hours to figure out I knew nothing about computers. So they took me out of the computer department, put me in the shipping department, where I was actually taking computers and putting them in boxes and taking them up and putting labels on them and sending it out. But, you know, it was really one of those times where you did anything to pay the rent. And then I got hired by Crosby Nash, ironically enough, playing Stephen Stills' parts in that show. As a result of that, wound up being invited to play slide guitar on an Eagles record called Good Day in Hell on the Border. And got a call the next day after I'd played on that record from Glenn Fry, who asked me to join the band. And I had to think about that for a minute or two. I went, okay, yeah, I'm in. So it was probably one of the best decisions I ever made in my life. And I went to Graham Nash, who I was playing with at the time, and asked him what I should do, because I was young and had no idea kind of if I should do that or not. And he said, absolutely, you should go join that band. Don't be a sideman the rest of your life. Go be part of a band. So although I was making $1,500 a week, which was more money than I'd ever made in my life in '74, I took Graham's advice and went to join the band, and the rest is history.
Wow. It sounds like your weak plan B may have been supply chain then with IBM. So I think the only difference between Don and the musicians is all the other musicians here are living plan B right now. So we got a plan A person up here. So.
No plan B.
Yeah. So collaboration, actually, speaking of supply chain, is a big word for us. So before we get into some Eagles questions, tell us about collaborating with the band we saw last night. They were incredible. How do you meet those guys?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. You know, at this point in my life and career, I play music for fun. I love to play music. I spent years struggling and trying to make a living in New York and in Boston and first in LA, and then after the Eagles, I really had a point where I decided, I would rather just go play music and play things for charities, use my God-given talent to try to make people have a good time, dance, fun. That's what brings me the joy in life. So I put together a large part of this band, about half of this band, to do this early charity work. I think it was about 2006 or something, and we started doing benefits, and whatever the cost for the band was, the people would pay that, and I wouldn't take any money, and I just had so much fun doing it and felt so good about doing it and enjoyed playing and using my talents to help kids with cancer, or St. Jude's Children's Hospital, or Autism Speaks, or I've done some benefits up in Canada for the Canadian Musical Therapy Trust. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but just enjoy that kind of work. And then there were some videos that this guy put together of me and said, you should take this and I'll introduce you to a booking agent, a friend of mine that owns this company up in Monterey, and he could probably get you some, real jobs. And I went, well, I don't know if I really want to work, I'm having too much fun to work. So next thing I know, I'm getting a call from this booking agent. He says, well, I've got this company and this company and this company that wants to hire you. And I said, as long as we could do something involved with it that actually has some good, some benefit that goes on with it, while I'm either in that town or before the show or after the show, we'll do something for a charity or whatnot, or sign guitars and donate them to local charities for their auctions or something, then I'll do it. So I selected these guys mainly, first and foremost, because they're really great people. They're super intelligent. My bass player, who you heard sing last night, he's probably one of the most gifted people I know in the music business. He plays unbelievable guitar. I hate him when he plays guitar because he plays guitar better than I do. He plays great bass. He is operatically trained tenor. He sings opera on stage in Germany and Italian, in foreign languages, which I couldn't pronounce half of the words, and here he is singing without a mic and maybe with an orchestra singing opera. He composes for full orchestra himself, just a multi-talented musician. And off stage, probably one of the nicest guys you could sit down and have a conversation with, because you spend a couple of hours on stage, and then you've got 22 hours you have to live with this person afterwards. So I've very carefully selected people that not only had a great deal of talent and a high pedigree, but that were really fun to spend my day with. And so everybody in the band has a really just substantial pedigree of people they've recorded with, toured with, their own personal accomplishments, as well as together we have a ball. I don't know if you noticed on stage, everybody's having a good time playing. There's nobody with a sour look on their face. There's no ego. We're just all having a great time and doing what we love doing.
That is awesome. Could we get the name of that booking agent, actually? Maybe we could use that. We'll be known as the Late Late Supply Chain Show Band, formerly in the same room with Don Felder. If we could book that, then. But so when you started collaborating with the Eagles, so they asked you to play some slide on a song. So you joined the band. When did you start writing music with them? Was that right out of the gate?
Well, you know, one of the things I did in New York before I moved to Boston and joined the band was I developed the skills to improvise. I really respected jazz musicians who could walk out on a stage, not play the exact same solo every night. They just make it up as they go. And that's the brilliance of having kind of command of your instrument and being able to have a musical thought and let it just spill out of you, you know? So I developed my improvisational skills, not only in the studio, but on stage in New York, so that when I went in and had to like make up a solo or play on a record, I could just come up with 4 or 5 or 6 different ideas musically. And when I came into that band, that was the first thing I did, was Good Day in Hell, which was the song I played slide guitar. It turned out to be a very long Good Day in Hell. And then they invited me back after I agreed to join the band. The first thing they did was started having me play other parts, like on Already Gone and On the Border and different guitar parts. And I had developed the skills to step into something since I was really just had learned to play by myself. We grew up in very kind of impoverished conditions. There was no music school. I learned to play everything by ear, borrowing people's records, borrowing tapes and listening to it and just learning how to play. So I could go into a studio and listen to something once or twice and then play something on it, just improvise on it. So they started putting me on all these tracks. But the following record, One of These Nights, is where I really got handed the reins to co-writing and being able to have songs that I would help build from ground up, not just overdubbing on it, you know, writing guitar parts and arrangements and stuff, and collaborating with Don and Glenn, who were brilliant lyricists and amazing singers. But musically, they didn't have really high-level skills of playing an instrument. Glenn was a good guitar player, but Don was a great drummer, but it was hard to write songs sitting down at a set of drums, you know? So it was my opportunity to write things that would go underneath them. And later we did that for Hotel California with those tracks and that went on that record. But it gave me the freedom to start being able to collaborate and write with those guys, and Randy Meisner and the people in the band.
Right. Well, I wasn't going to bring it up, but since you brought up Hotel California,
okay.
It's a great story. Maybe you can tell us how that all started.
I can't remember. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Do we have a copy of Don's book here? We could.
I had rented this beach house in Malibu. Well, didn't rent it. My wife at the time rented it because we had bought this house in Topanga, which is really out in this wooded kind of mountainous area. It's kind of a hippie community. And we had just had our first little boy, and she had taken him outside and put this blanket down in the sun, and they were going to sit outside for a few minutes. He was about 9 months old or something, and she went to set this little baby down, and there was a coiled up rattlesnake, which is really prevalent in California. And she went to put it down and saw that rattlesnake and took the baby, ran back in the house and called me and said, "We're moving." So I was out on the road and said, "Okay, just tell me the address so when I get to the airport, I know where I'm living now, you know?" So I got in a car and drove out to Malibu to this beach house that we had rented for the summer that we were out there until we could find another place we were going to live. And I was just sitting on a couch playing guitar like I do pretty much all day, not just sitting on the couch, but wherever I am, I try to play it all day. At least between 3 and 5 hours a day. I love to do it, you know. So I'm sitting on this couch just tinkering away, and you could see the Pacific Ocean out there with the sun glistening on the waves, and my kids had a swing set on this sandy beach, and they were out playing on the beach, and it was just one of those perfect California days. And I was home, thank God I was off the road. I was home off the road, and out came this like chord progression, and I played it 3 or 4 or 5 times and went, I have to go record this. If I don't write something down, if it's a lyric idea, or record it, 2 days later you go, what was that idea? It kind of went like, I can't remember it. So I converted my daughter's bedroom. She was 1 year old at the time. And I'd put a tape recorder in there so when she was awake, I could go back and record in this little studio that I'd made back in her bedroom. I went back and recorded that progression, I don't know, 4 or 5 times over and over, and I turned it off and then went out and joined my kids on the beach and spent the day with them. And then later when we were getting ready to record the Hotel California album, I started going back and listening to these ideas on this reel-to-reel tape, and I heard that track and said, I'm going to finish this. So I went back and got a drum machine and set it to a cha-cha beat. I don't know if you've ever heard a drum play cha-cha. It was the closest thing to a reggae I could kind of find in this drum machine. And then I replayed that progression and wrote a chorus for it and played the bass part. And Joe Walsh had just joined the band, and Joe and I had been doing these shows together, Joe Walsh shows, for Don Kirshner's rock concert. And I think we did a show in Dodger Stadium with Elton John, and where Joe and I would just jam and play great guitar against each other. And it was so much fun that when he joined the band, I wanted to write a song that Joe and I could do that on an Eagles record, because it was just so much fun to do. So when I was listening to that song, I thought this would be great once I get to the parts where Joe and I can do this. So I kind of wrote these 2 guitar parts, one that's pretty much exactly like what's on the record now that I played, and then I put that guitar down and said, well, Joe would play something kind of like this, and I kind of simulated that ending guitar solo. I had finished 15 or 16 other song ideas and put them on a cassette. I don't know if anybody remembers what a cassette is. Put it on a cassette and made copies of it, and I gave copies of that cassette to everybody in the band. One of the other songs that wound up on the record was a song called Victim of Love that was on that cassette. And so Henley calls me up and says, I really like that song that sounds kind of like a Mexican reggae. And I knew exactly what track he was talking about. So we went in and recorded the song as a band, and I'd written it in this great guitar key, E minor, which you can appreciate, right? And we went in and recorded it in E minor. It sounded really nice and big and full, but it was too fast. So we went back in the studio, recorded the whole track again, which is 6.5 minutes long. Recorded it all again at a slightly slower tempo that felt better. And then Don and Glenn had been working on these lyrics, and nobody had heard them, although we had talked about nobody in the band was from California, yet we became the California sound, It's kind of strange, but every one of us had driven into California, like I did with my U-Haul trailer on the back, and as you drive down Route 66 at night, you can see the glow on the horizon of Los Angeles just shimmering away as you're coming in. And all the concepts and ideas and propaganda you have in your mind about California through advertising and television and films of the palm trees and the sandy beaches and surfing and girls in bikinis and girls in bikinis and girls in bikinis. All those ideas, the stars on Hollywood Boulevard, all that stuff just starts rolling through your mind. It's like our fantasy that we've all built from what we conceive California to be. So we wanted to write a song about the Hotel California. And once we had that foundation of a concept, Don and Glenn went off into their little songwriting lyric world and wrote some just brilliant lyrics. I think Don Henley's probably one of the best lyricists, if not best rock voices in America. And so after we recorded the track for the second time, Don came in and started to sing on it. And he sounded like Barry Gibb in that really high falsetto, or like Minnie Mouse or something. And I went, wait, that's the wrong key. So we had to figure out, the whole song had to be re-recorded for the third time in the right key that Don could sing in. So we had to go back in, re-record the entire song again for the third time. And when it came time to actually do those guitar parts on the end of the record, I always thought Joe and I would go into the studio, set up 2 stools in the control room, our amps out on the other side of the glass, and we would just play and go at each other like we'd always done, right? That's what I really wanted to do, was capture that fire and excitement of pushing each other and trying to one-up each other in a very loving, friendly way to make each of us play at a higher level, you know? So we were doing that, and Don Henley walks back in the control room and goes, "Wait, stop, what are you doing?" I went, "Well, we're putting the guitars on the end of the song." He says, no, you got to do it just like your demo. I said, I wrote that a year ago. I have no idea what that is. And we were in the studio in Miami. I had to pick up the phone, call my house, get my housekeeper to go through my cassettes, find the right cassette, put it in a blaster, play it and hold the phone up to it so we could record it in the studio. And I had to sit down and learn exactly verbatim what I just made up, you know, as a rough idea, and that literally became verbatim what was on the record today. So there was a lot of collaboration that went on lyrically, musically, guitar part stuff. Don had been listening to that tape over and over and over, and when it got to the end, that's what he expected to hear. And so we did that. And I remember we had this playback party at the end of the recording of that album. And we had all the record company executives, the big guys from Warner Brothers and everybody there that had been pounding on our door because they wanted that product to get out and start making money. We made them wait like an extra 6 months for it. So we
Sound familiar?
Yeah, we played the reel back with all the songs on it, and as Hotel California went by at the end, Don turned around to the record company execs and said, "That's going to be our single." Now, I don't know if you know what AM radio used to be like in the mid-'70s, but there was a specific format. It had to be between 3 minutes and 30 seconds long. It had to be a dance or a rock track or a disco track or a drippy ballad. The introduction couldn't be longer than 30 seconds because the disc jockey didn't want to sit there and talk for more than 30 seconds before the vocals started. It was a really specific format for airplay songs at that time. And Hotel California was the epitome of being the opposite of that format. It was 6.5 minutes long. The introduction is over a minute before the vocalist starts singing. You can't really dance to it like a rock track. It stops in the middle, the drums break down, and you know, there's no rhythm, and then it's got this 2-minute guitar solo on the end. It's like absolutely wrong. So I went, "Don, I don't think that's the right track. Maybe FM radio, but not AM radio." He said, "Nope, that's what we're gonna do." And I went, "Okay, I told you so." So I couldn't be happier to have been so wrong in my life as the success of that record, and Don was very wise in selecting that track to be one of the singles.
So you probably don't know how many times you played it, but last night it looked like it was the first time you played it. Do you have a favorite moment where you played that song? I know when I saw the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction, that just seemed like that was a special time to do that song. Were there any other moments?
Yeah, when we started regrouping for the Hell Freezes Over tour, in that era, in the mid-'90s, everything was like unplugged. Eric Clapton had done this live unplugged version of some of his songs, and it was like the thing everybody was doing. So we put together a section of our show that was all unplugged. And we had been on a soundstage rehearsing for about 2 weeks, and we worked up all these unplugged versions, different songs. And then, like about 4 days before the taping of that show, Don says, "We need an unplugged version of Hotel." Now, I had never thought of that song being played on a couple of acoustic guitars and sounding like some country flat pickers, you know, kind of hee-haw, kind of. So when I was in Boston, I had one of my day jobs or early evening jobs was after I got done working at the studio, I'd get on a train and ride over to Harvard Square, and I'd go to the Holiday Inn and stand there or sit there and play nylon string guitar for people while they were eating their dinner and ordering more wine and stuff. And every night I played there 3 hours from 6 to 9, and my chops or my ability on nylon string guitar got really good. And I kept thinking, well, this song is kind of that Hispanic, Latin flavor. Maybe I could do a version of it on nylon string guitar. So I get a couple of nylon string guitar, go into Joe, who I don't think ever even owned a nylon string guitar. If it didn't have an amp with like a big volume knob on it, he didn't have it, right? So I said, Joe, maybe we should just think of this, if we're going to do an unplugged version, this way, with acoustic kind of Spanish flavored guitar. And so we worked up some stuff, and it started right at the beginning of the intro, like the record did, and went forward. And we worked it out. It sounded good at sound check and rehearsals. And we go on the stage at Warner Brothers Studios on the sound stage where we filmed that DVD, Hell Freezes Over. And we're sitting there, we're running it through, and we're like about 45 minutes away from the taping. Don says, this song needs a really special introduction. And I said, well, what are you going to say? How are you going to introduce this? He says, no, not that. You need to just make up something. So I went, okay. So I had developed improvisational skills, which they knew I could do. I said, okay, you play this chord, I'll diddle around, then play this chord, I'll diddle around, play this chord, and I'll diddle around. And literally that introduction of the acoustic version of Hotel California was just made up on the spot, on camera, in front of an audience, probably I think 600 people or something. And I said, well, if worst comes to worst, we can always go and just start the video right at the downbeat of the song. But, it turned out that actually worked really well. And so it was one of those moments where somebody throws you off the building. It's not really a leap of faith. You're actually tossed off the building and hope that you land on your feet. And I think for me, it was just a personal accomplishment to be able to be handed that task that last minute before going out on the field and make up something and have it come out so well.
Did you have to play that again?
I haven't. I couldn't probably play it right now if I had to, because I just made it up. I'd have to sit down and learn it again,
It's when you listen to it, it's almost, I don't know, if you haven't heard it, you need to hear the acoustic version. But there's almost that moment where the crowd realizes what song it is.
Yeah.
And then did they know? Did they think you were just kind of...
Yeah, they didn't know what was coming, and then all of a sudden we start the downbeat of the introduction, and everybody goes,
just
oh.
that piece is incredible.
Right.
To get in. I listen, if I'm on an airplane, I've listened it to every flight I've been on, I listen to that, but that's great. Everyone in this room, we collaborate with people, and everybody's striving for excellence, and you obviously achieved it. It was just to get your product out, but in a situation that you were in where it was, you didn't always agree. I'm guessing that's an understatement, to say the least. But what advice would you give to people in that situation? Like, what did you do to keep focused and get the product out the door?
I think when you have multiple opinions on anything, for me, it's worth the time and interest and investment to take a serious look at every idea. And that's what we did with the Eagles. I mean, the solo on I Can't Tell You Why. It was Timothy's song, and Joe's got this kind of like Joe Walsh way of playing, and so he took a stab at it, and it really didn't work. And so then I set up and I took a stab at it, and it was just a little too edgy, and Glenn picked up a guitar, and he plays very simply. Yeah. So he played this really simple that was just so appropriate for that song. Yeah. So instead of saying, no, this is the way we should do it, we let everybody take a look at it, and then we all said, that's the answer right there. So I think in the course of collaboration, if you can find people's strengths and talents that best fit that particular solution, that's the way we did it. We would rely heavily on Don and Glenn for lyrics, Joe and I for music composition and kind of the rock edge of stuff, and we all helped arrange vocals and sing together. So it was a collaboration on just about every front. And even though there were head banging times along the way, that's to be expected when you have 5 A-type personalities that have all fronted their own band. They've all had success on their own individually, and they think they're right. So the only way to go about it is to take a look and see what works and what doesn't.
So did you live? I thought I saw you play that solo. Did you do the solo live on I Can't Tell You Why then?
Yes, I did.
Okay,
Yeah. Every time we played it live, because Glenn played piano.
Yeah.
And so I got stuck playing pedal steel on all the records. I'd never played pedal steel before, and when Bernie left, I inherited having to play pedal steel guitar on Best of My Love and a couple of other things, and I had to learn to play 5-string banjo on Midnight Flyer and mandolin on certain stuff. I'd never played those instruments before, and it was like, okay, here's your next job. It's like, okay, I can do this. And if anything that has strings, I can figure out how it plays.
Yeah, I heard an interview with Glenn talking about that song. He said that was one of his favorite songs to play. In the same interview, he said, you and Joe Walsh, he said, we just had 2 prolific guitar players in the band. And he said, you didn't get enough credit back then. But he, anyway.
It wasn't about getting credit. It was
Yeah.
about making great records and putting together great songs for me, you know.
But he just, I'm sure there were a lot of good times. And
There was, absolutely.
And speaking of collaborating, when I was reading your bio, I couldn't believe how many other people you've played with. So you have a list of, we heard Kid Rock and David Gilmour for the other guys in your band. Who else have you played with?
Well, gosh, I've played with so many different people, it's hard to remember them all, you know. I worked on a lot of Bee Gees records. We used to work down in this studio in Miami that had 5 or 6 different recording studios in this long hallway. And so when you went walking down the hallway, somebody would come out and go, oh, we need a guitar part on this. Here, come in. So I'd go in and play on a Bee Gees record. And then we'd walking down the hallway in Chicago, would be in another room. We need horns on this. And they'd grab the band from the guys from Chicago. And it was a very kind of, it was a great kind of creative place to be able to grab talent and put things together. And I remember I was walking down the hallway and Stephen Stills, my high school buddy from like 14 and 15, was in a studio, and I walked down and he went, Felder, get in here, we need a guitar part. And so I went in and he and I are recording in the studio. There was a really camaraderie, and a lot of times rock and roll can be, almost defensive, where people feel their ego gets in the way, but I've never felt that way. So I've worked with like Bob Seger, everybody from Seger to the Bee Gees to Barbra Streisand. I've worked on a couple of Barbra Streisand records. Oh my God. Peter Frampton, tons of different people, Like I said, I'd have to look at my own bio to remember everybody I've worked with.
So are you still do a lot of songwriting? You get home, you're playing a lot, you're doing the songwriting thing?
I can't stop.
Yeah.
That's part of the problem, you keep hearing things, and I have a little iPhone, and I'll be driving down the freeway and I'll get this idea for a lyric and put it on record and be singing going down the freeway, this lyric idea or a melody, and then I listen to it 3 days later and go, what was I thinking? What was that? And then I have guitars all around my house and that little iPhone, so a lot of times I'll sit and watch television and play a guitar, electric guitar that's not plugged in, but like if a film score goes by and there's like a really interesting melodic change, a chord change or something, I'll back that up and try to learn what that orchestra did and how it would sound on guitar, and I come up with something, and push record, and I record it, and those little pieces actually are like the kernels or seeds of ideas that later blossom into things. So I collect these little pieces and ideas, and then when it comes time to write, I sit down and I don't listen to anything. I don't listen to the radio, I don't listen to television, I don't watch to see who's on the late shows and what new songs are out, because you wind up, that goes in, and then later as you're being creative, it starts coming out and you go, wait a minute, that just sounds like this other song I just heard. You don't want to do that. So I deliberately don't listen to anything. And I kind of isolate myself musically and write music, which I just recorded 7 tracks in a studio 10 days ago. I go back on Sunday, I have Monday off, thank gosh. Go back in the studio on 18th, on Tuesday, and record for 2 more days, and then we travel out on Friday. But those little ideas that come by, you take those and kind of blow life into them and inflate them and see what they become. And the stuff that really turns out to be special, I finish, either lyrics or guitar parts or overdubs or solos, and the things that don't, they go to digital heaven. They get erased and off and gone somewhere, so I'm constantly writing.
Yeah. Do you find technology-wise, are you old school guy? Are you using the latest and greatest?
Well, I am an old school guy, but I use as much technology as I possibly can. I think the whole digital media, to be able to use communication on the internet's great. All the modern technology of recording is brilliant. But I will say, back in the 70s, you didn't have auto-tune, you didn't have digital editing. You actually had to sing in tune, write good songs, and play together as a band. What a novel idea to have a band that could like write, sing, and play, you know? I think all the digital technology really enables people that don't have a really high level of skills to be corrected and perfected, where the real talent of, to me, are people that write, sing, and play their own music. Are the people that I admire the most. It's like being the triple threat, you know, or the hat trick in hockey or something, you know. So
now I understand.
just wanted to clarify that. By the way, I love Canada. I have a place up just outside Banff. I hide away up there at least a couple of times a year. Canadians are the nicest people on the planet, I have to say. Two quick stories. I was driving up Trans-Canada Highway 1 going up to my place in Banff, and I had to make a phone call, and the car I had didn't have Bluetooth, so I just pulled over on the side of the road, and I'm sitting there on the phone talking, and 3 cars stopped and said, "You okay? You need help? Can I help you with something?" And I'm going, that would never happen in Los Angeles, ever. You could sit there for a month and cars would just whiz by, you know? So anyway, and then another time I went into the market and I had this little basket and I just picked up 3 or 4 things and I was waiting in line and this lady in front of me had this basket that was just overflowing. She probably had $500 worth of groceries in there. She turns around and looks at me, she says, "Oh, you go ahead. You don't want to wait for me. Go in front of me." And I was shocked. I said, this doesn't happen in the United States. You know, it's everybody trying to cut ahead of you and cut you off on the freeway. And so I really have met a lot of really wonderful Canadians and befriended some that are really special people. I appreciate it.
And your wife is Canadian?
Yes, she is,
Yeah, where's she from?
Well, she was actually born in England, but migrated into the Niagara-on-the-Lake area, which was the original province, I guess, where the capital was. And the Queen was like in charge of everything. Why they still honor the Queen, I don't know. They're Canadian.
Neither do
but when it's on their money, it's like, how does this figure, you know? But, and then I met, I'm apolitical. I am not a political person at all. So when I mention these names, please don't react politically. I met Stephen and Lorraine Harper about 6 years ago, and we've become really good friends. Well, we have some. Okay. And so she comes to the shows. Stephen's, believe it or not, a really funny guy, extremely smart. And when he's not talking politics and trying to be prime minister, he's really a very entertaining, and he plays great piano, by the way. So I've been trying to get him to come down and sit in and play piano on Take It Easy with me. And so far, he's come up with a brilliant excuse every single time I've offered. I think he doesn't want to be the Bill Clinton with a saxophone on camera somewhere, you know. But I just had dinner at their house on September 21st, which was my birthday, and they invited me over to their house in Calgary and had dinner, and then they came to the show the next day. So just really great people, you know.
Don was saying you tried to get Stephen to play at Blues Fest when you were in Ottawa. Use the weather as the excuse, right?
Yeah, that was in Ottawa. Yeah, that's right.
So you were just in Canada, weren't you?
Yes.
Yeah. So what's coming up for you? What's the tour schedule look like?
Well, I only try to look about a week ahead, because if I look too far, I get really depressed that I don't have any free time, you know?
I can tell you then.
Okay. Well, we're going to wind up going to China and doing the largest benefit in China for orphan children. And then we go to Japan and do 8 shows, 4 in Tokyo and 4 at Osaka. And then finally I come back and things end for me like about the middle of November, and that it resumes on December 30th. We have a residency in Las Vegas at the Venetian. If anybody wants to come party in Vegas with myself and Styx, we'll be there for, I think it's from the 4th through the 12th or something there. We're putting together a summer tour for 2017 with REO, Styx, and myself, so we'll be out running around the U.S. and hopefully through Canada. Gosh, I'm going to Germany for 4 weeks, end of March, doing 16 shows into the middle of April. A lot of private events, a lot of corporate shows, a lot of charity events that I can plug in those off times. Trying to finish the CD for a release by spring so that I can have product on the radio next summer when I'm out on the road. We shot a DVD in Las Vegas, I think a year and a half ago. That's been edited. It aired on Access TV, so we're going to print that as a Blu-ray and put that out. And so there's just a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Speaking of you mentioned the hat trick. It seemed like a lot of pictures I've seen you and you were wearing a Chicago Blackhawk shirt.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Are you now you're a golfer, right?
I'm a golfer. Yes.
Yeah. Are you above 100 or below 100? Or are you throw the 9-iron or shoot the 9?
Well, I was a 7.2 handicap up until about 3 years ago when I really started working a lot. And when we're on the road touring, I carry a set of golf clubs in the bottom of the bus so that we plan our days off. So we wind up staying somewhere really near a great golf course, and we trade green fees for tickets to our next show, right?
Yeah.
So we can get on anywhere, you know? And so that day off, we go play golf, and a lot of guys in Styx and Foreigner and Steve Miller and all the people that I tour with all play golf. So we plan our tour routing based on where we're going to play golf on the road. But when we're not touring that way, it's hard for me to take the time to actually go out and play. I just did a thing for Hilton and at the Riviera Country Club. I've played there 50 times or something, but they wanted me to come down that day and go out and play 18 holes and then do a sound check and then do a show and then do a meet and greet, and I would have just been absolutely exhausted after doing that. And so I had to humbly decline on the golf and be in good physical shape and my strength for playing the show and performing.
Well, my wife, I think, is sitting in the back here. She doesn't know it yet, but my birthday present is to one of the shows at the Venetian in January. So
Did you hear that?
Yeah, we might see you there. So, Don, we really appreciate you taking the time to sign everything, doing the meet and greet. We can't tell you how much fun we had last night and this morning. We really appreciate you being here. So, how about one more time here?
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
That was awesome. Really appreciate it. Yeah.
Was that good?
That was awesome. Oh my God. We kept saying.
So glad you made it.
That was awesome. Yeah.
We're so glad you made it.